Good. Let's do it.
Recording in progress as per the AI generated voice. I rely on her. If we ever get rid of her Zoom, I will start a riot. Welcome to Bolded Slugs. I am Zeus Ryan. Today with me, we've got NJ Alexander, also known as Nick, if you're nasty. And we're going to go ahead and talk to him real quick. Fastest half hour in the business. Tell the people how you are.
Hey, everyone. Doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
See, I love it when the check clears, when people say those things up front. Just makes me know it's money well spent.
That's right.
So, writing, right? That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to talk about. But it's a struggle bus out there, man. It's just to put it kindly.
Yes.
Lots of things have changed, whether you're in traditional print, whether you're in the screenwriting world. Writing of all shapes, sizes, and stripes are just... I would say it's not what it once was, but was it ever?
Was it ever really one thing? We don't really know.
So where do you feel like in your career you're at, and where do you feel like you have yet to go in terms of, like, have I made it? Am I still chasing something? What's your 5-year plan?
Man, that's wow. What a question for question number one. Getting to the 5-year plan. Dang, we go right after it here.
It's all downhill from here.
All right. Well, a quick history here. So I feel like I've come a long way since when I first started writing and publishing. If anyone knows my story, I unfortunately was into a vanity press trap when I was 19, and that's how my quote unquote first ever book got published.
Aren't they pretty
good,
though?
not great.
Aren't they pretty though?
Yeah.
I mean, I did my time. Hell, bro, I founded one. So let's not get too carried away. So game, respect game, I guess I got to say.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I've come a long way since that really crappy book was published all those years ago. I was 19 when that happened. I'm 32 now. I feel like I'm in a really good place where I've really rebirthed my career, my writing career in the past few years.
Okay.
Since maybe I turned 30 when I ripped everything up and just did it all again. And now I finally feel proud of what I'm writing. Like that very first book, for example,
okay.
My release now, it's called Fogbound, that came out a couple of months ago. Technically, it's that book released again, but you would never know because of how different it is. And to give an idea, I basically ripped that book to shreds. I took it like there's 50,000 words that just got deleted. Everything else got rewritten. And now I'm finally proud of something that I wrote and put out into the world. There's a lot I can still get to, you know. I'm not at the level I want to achieve. Do we ever really get there? I don't know. Well, that's a question, right?
You ask any writer, I think, that's worth their salt. They would say technical difficulties with the camera. This is why we use audio. They would say that any given whip or material, you're never done with it. There's never a finish. You are at best happy to let it go because you give us enough time. We'll rebuild it, tear it down, rebuild it as many times as possible. But the idea that 19 to 30, you wouldn't have had, you know, a wiser eye to the material, you know?
Yeah.
So do you think at the very least, in that regard, maybe it is necessary to revisit older material to be like, hey, listen, look at the things that I can do now that I didn't even know were possible back then. And I really like that story enough. Can I make it into something better?
Hey, man, if Taylor Swift can do it, I can do it. You know, if she can go back and re-record, so can I. And I'm okay with that.
I feel like we really should just take Taylor's example and just re-record, re-release everything.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For one, I mean, the hard part is kind of already done, and you just sing it a little bit better with more velvety tones, and then step 3, step 4, step 5, make billions. I mean, whatever those other 2 steps are, doesn't matter.
It's fine. But no, I mean, to answer your question seriously, yeah, you know, yes, I did mess up, and it was a painful process getting it all back together. But I do think that I've benefited from it. I've learned a lot. The industry has also grown a lot since I was 19. Indie and self-publishing is way bigger than what it was when I was in my teens. And there's a lot more opportunity now for people going the self and independent published route. And I think that's great.
It used to be that, in a weird way, I promise this parallel will pay off. But in a weird way, it's like back when online dating first started happening, and people were like, "What? How? Who? That's gross. That's weird. Yeah. You don't even know this person. You've never met them, like, for real." That self-publishing really kind of felt like that stigma was attached to it. It's like, ew, gross. Like, you just, how did you edit? Where did you get your book covered? Like, you did it all yourself? Like, that's so against the rules and so just not proper. But then now it's like, realistically, why would you not pursue that as an option if it's available? Because the traditional methods have become that much harder to really get your work out to people.
And
it's so acceptable
love that
now.
Parallel. No, it's great. It's great. And I mean, there's so much opportunity. And with everybody in the freelancing community that's out there, if you need to hire service, there's a lot more out there for you to hire from. Like for me, I can't draw covers. I have no way I'm doing that. And there's so many cover artists, so many illustrators that there's just, if you wanted to do the independent route, there are so many avenues for you to do it. And I think that's just awesome.
This is why we stick to words, man. If I could draw, I'd do that. No shame to the people that can do everything. I hate you, but no shame. I mean,
I agree.
Your versatility is not envious by me in any way, shape, or form.
That's right.
But yeah, like the opportunities for people to get their work out in ways that the system, the machine, would tell you even 5 years ago were just not possible. And yeah, why wouldn't you? Now there are traps, like you said, vanity presses. Let me dig into that real quick.
Ooh, let's do it.
Indie publishing being one thing, that valid pursuit. Like I said, I helped found one many moons ago because a stepping stone towards getting your stuff published is a stepping stone, right? But where do you come on, like, basically charging people to do work that wouldn't you expect them to do for you? Like, wait, you mean to tell me I have to pay you to be on your list of people that you pub? Why wouldn't I do that myself? What do I need you for, I guess, is the question that I'm asking.
Yeah, I think what I've always told people is I think paying for the services that go into making a book, paying for cover design, paying for editing, formatting, all of that stuff, totally cool, totally valid. I'm not saying, you'll never find a scam, but that's generally a very accepted practice. But having to pay to be published is where you should turn away and, well, I should say run away from any opportunity that says that. If you want to pay for a cover, cool. But if they say, hey, you need to pay me $1,500 to get your book published, no, that is not okay.
And that's part of the reason why, to a degree, this podcast exists, is because people that have, long, lengthy careers, the Stephen Kings, the Neil Gaimans, the Double R Ranch Martins, they're not at the level where it's like, what do you mean I have to pay you to publish me?
Right.
And I think it's the people on the ground that are like still closer to the dream being kind of impossible than possible, are the ones that are presented with these types of issues. And what else? So what else do you see? The aspiring writer, artist, what have you? What else do you see as an obstacle in the way that is kind of like, I don't know that should be there?
It's hard because the traditional methods, they are what they are, and they are extremely challenging. I'm not saying they shouldn't exist. I'm not saying querying and pitching agents and all that. I'm not saying that shouldn't exist, but it's definitely a barrier to getting something published. And I think agents realize that, right? They realize that they play a part in a barrier of preventing something from being published.
Correct.
Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but I think that also leads people to maybe look at these vanity presses and say, oh, well, I don't have to go through this extensive process. I'll just give them some money. I have the money. I'll just have them do it. And I think that leads to a lot of people, unfortunately, falling into traps.
True, because if it's a pay-to-play system,
Yeah.
realistically, the only people that are going to win are the people that already have the money, and it
Yep.
just leaves out a significant subset of people whose voices we really do need to hear. And I do want to ask because
Yeah.
genre, I do think, plays a significant portion
Mm-hmm.
of this discussion,
Yeah.
and especially the traditional fantasy, epic fantasy. I lump them all together because I like them all. I
Oh, yeah.
know that you can
Mm-hmm.
break things down. Steampunk, there's
Yeah.
solar punk. I heard of that one once, and I'm
Solar
like,
punk. Ooh, I haven't
I
heard
don't,
of that.
I I think someone made it up, but it sounds cool.
I like the sound of it. Yeah.
But in terms of fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
it really seems even now, 2023, the year of somebody's lord,
Yeah.
that fantasy still is like, if it's not Lord of the Rings, if it's not I think the closest new one would be The Witcher. But if it's not A
Mm-hmm.
Song of Ice and Fire, if it's not Lord of the Rings, you're kind of meh. Where do you feel like that genre can overcome kind of I feel like self-imposed sort of restrictions to itself?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked this question because that is the genre I write in, epic fantasy.
That's my
So I'm
dude.
very familiar with it. So I think it's hard to not just be another epic fantasy book, but you can add things and do twists on tropes, character archetypes, all that to make yourself stand out from the crowd. I know romantasy is huge now too, which I'm not saying that's epic fantasy, but you can have an epic fantasy with these more romance elements to them. And I think that's one of the driving examples, one of the bigger differences we're seeing today is a lot more romance in these epic fantasy novels. At least
People
that's
want
what I've noticed in my
people want
experience.
love, man. Yeah,
They do.
it's not just the Danielle Steele bodice
That's
ripping
right.
stuff. Not that that ever really went away, but it's like
Right.
almost give me that, but can we have swords
Yeah,
and some
right.
like some
Exactly. And if
castles
you
and
think
stuff
about it,
too?
pretty cool. I don't do a whole lot of romance in my writing. It's not something I'm particularly skilled at, but I understand why it's so big. It's people who want maybe a romance novel, but like you said, they want to have some swords or some
Right.
magic to go along with it.
Give
Nothing
me an
wrong
elf
with
who
that.
throws a fireball. Just toss it in.
That's right. Exactly. And that's why that's one thing I think that indie authors or really a new epic fantasy author can put into their books to really make them different from these huge epics like Lord of the Rings and all of that. Yes, of course, those series have romance too, but they're not romantasy as we called it.
What do you think you bring to the table in terms of epic fantasy can be used as an allegory, as a parallel to
Yeah.
really anything?
Mm-hmm.
Politics, good lord. Where
Yep.
do you
Yeah.
feel your voice really shines in those tales in terms of what you
Sure.
feel like you are trying to say?
Yeah. So even though my stories are epic, they are mostly character focused. The
Right on.
world is not really the focus of what I write. It's really in the characters, their struggles, and what they go through. As an example, the main character of Fogbound is not your traditional teenager chosen one type. He is coming more from oh, my life is being uprooted, not for a good reason. I don't like that sort of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what I wanted to tell with that story. Like sometimes things happen where your life gets shaken up. You do have to go out of your comfort zone and do things maybe you don't want to do. And maybe you're at an age where you're comfortable in your life and this is something that you really, really don't want to happen to you. But unfortunately, it is.
The idea of a 35, 40-year-old guy who's just like, I'm set, like it's cool. I've got a horse. I've got
Yep.
I got a babbling brook that I visit every now and
That's
then,
right.
grab some fish. My life is fine. But this evil empire next door, they're really harshing my mellow. Like, I kind of want to see that story of a dude who's kind of is like, man, I'm yay close to retirement,
Yep.
whatever. But now I got to go be Billy Badass and like knock some people's teeth out, because it is. And I've written stories like this too,
Yeah.
where it is the young man, the young woman,
Of course.
granted, their lineage obviously is full of royalty. I want to read regular stories about regular people who do all of the things that we've seen before, because I am now that guy. I'm a 40-year-old dude. I was like, I want to know I want a 40-year-old guy with a bad back and a bum knee, does against a horde of invading orcs or whatever.
Right? Have you, not to get too off topic here, but speaking of this, have you read Kings of the Wilds?
I have not, no.
So that is why I relate to this book so much. I'm going to give a very terrible synopsis of it. Sorry, Nicholas Eames. But basically, it's almost like you said. It's a bunch of 40-year-old dudes who used to be, or maybe older, who used to be like these legendary warriors, but now they're like old and fat alcoholics, and they got to go on one more quest. It's great. It's great.
See, I remember what was it, 92, 93, the original live action Disney Musketeers with like Kiefer Sutherland and I remember watching that, and it was like, these dudes, they may have been in their late 20s, early 30s. I don't know. I was 10. Right. But it looked very much like, look at these old drunken bastards who are so out of sorts and out of shape.
Yep.
How are they gonna, against Cardinal Richelieu, Tim Curry, and his big giant flowing red robe? These guys have no chance. They're bumbling idiots. I like that. The idea. I don't advocate this gentleman's music, but I am fond of one of Toby Keith's songs. In the line is, what is it? I may not be as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. It's a decent enough song. But that notion is like, give me the people who maybe fought for a cause, did their duty, whatever, and then sat for 20 years and did nothing. Like, what are those people forced to do? Because the idealized 18, 19, 20-year-old with the chutzpah, the ambition, and a metabolism that works. I don't relate to those kids anymore. They're wonderful stories. If you are of that age, consume all of it that you can. But I want a guy who's like, I got a little bit of bursitis in this elbow. It's gonna be a rough day. I want those.
It's great that you mentioned that, because when I first set out to write this book, I wanted to create characters who were older than me. But in the time it took for me to actually re-release it, I'm now older than the characters.
You caught up?
Yeah.
Like, I talked to a previous fantasy author, and the notion came up of like the Dungeons and Dragons group and turning those campaigns or adventures into stories. And historically, there are a bunch of examples. The original Dragonlance novels did that, and a bunch of other people have. But the idea of, like, what do you do with those characters after they've retired? What do you do when that 15th, 16th level guy, he hasn't had to throw a fireball in you? Do they still have it?
Can they still do it?
Is that what they're after? Is it really the notion of like protecting and justice and all of that? Those stay with you even after you maybe previously have succeeded. Do you find, especially now that you kind of have caught up with your characters, that the drivers of like their story have changed in terms of what their goals are, even what their desires were, as opposed to, when you were 19 or 20?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've also learned that I made most of my main characters, they're mid to late 20s. And I made them very mature. Since I've now left my late 20s, I'm like, man, I wrote them way more mature than people in their late 20s should be.
Oh man. Yeah. There's a notion, because I'm 40.
Yep.
And I say that number out loud. And for those of you without the benefit of the video, I'm sitting in front of a wall that is stacked full of action figures and comic books.
It's a great wall.
I am not. A little bit of a side note. Back during when COVID happened, right? And we were all on lockdown. You saw all of these people on the news shows that were sitting in front of their library books and their and all of that. And I'm like, I have a collection, but I don't have a big enough bookshelf.
Sure.
So I decided I wanted something better to look at. And so I have nothing but, let's see, half of these are He-Man figures. There's a couple Witcher ones tossed in there, but most of these are DC Multiverse you buy at Target or Walmart for like $20.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, that I think is a much better and more interesting thing to look at than trying to determine a person's sophistication by their bookshelf. I've got sophisticated books too, but I've also got like The Killing Joke by Alan Moore. So
yeah, exactly. It's very striking, I will say.
I appreciate that. And at one point, whenever I do decide that video, I look good enough on video, I might do that. But for right now, it's only an audio bonus for those on the Patreon. When people talk about just generally, I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. That's what I do, or that is what I would like to do for my gig. 9 to 5's kind of pushed to the side for a second.
Yeah.
Do you feel confident when you say that only after having published material that you're proud of? Or was there a period where it's like, no, I am a writer, this is what I do, and it doesn't matter what my back catalog looks like. This is who I am and how I express things to people?
That is a fantastic question. I still have a little bit of difficulty in telling people that I'm quote unquote, I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my, we saying putting day job aside. It's not my day job. So when people ask me what I do, my inclination is not to say I'm a writer, because it's not what I do in my day job. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I need to work on, because you know what? I'm a freaking writer. I wrote a whole ass book. It's now out, and I'm pretty proud of it. So I should be able to say that, yeah, I'm a writer, I'm an author, all that good stuff. But definitely something I have to work on. I think that's also something that a lot of writers, authors, however you want to refer to yourself, I think a lot of them have difficulty with telling people, yeah, I'm a writer. There's always that little bit of self-doubt that we have to work through.
Which I find weird. And tell me if you agree or disagree, is that when we get home from that 9 to 5, what do all of us do? Every single one of us. We turn on the TV and we watch something. We read something. We listen to something. And ostensibly, nearly everything that everybody does, a certain portion of the day, is that art. But yet when you say it out loud, oh, I made this, or I work in that area, we have that trepidation to be like, no, I am the person that makes those kinds of things that you like. Why am I embarrassed about saying that out loud?
I totally agree, because I feel that all the time. I'm getting better about it, about telling people this. My lovely fiance tells people that too, so she's better at promoting me than I am.
Hey,
which is good to have.
That's good pub. I'm glad you're locking that one down. That's good pub.
Right. Exactly.
So in the last 10 minutes that we have here, this is the unnecessarily abrupt segue to a segment I call Pick a Fight.
All right.
And this is where, in terms of the industry at large, what do you absolutely hate, either that you had to go through, still have to go through, or that writers behind you still get kind of stuck into, and what would you like to see go away in terms of what would you make, or what would make the industry better for really everyone if this one thing disappeared and you hate it, so you want to pick a fight on a podcast?
Pick a fight about it, huh?
Because I don't have
all right,
guns.
what do I want to pick a fight about today? Let's see. There's a lot of things I could pick a fight about, but I'm going to go with this one thing. I think sometimes when we see, now I'm not a traditional publisher basher. I like traditional publishing. I like, all that good stuff. I will say sometimes we don't get a great variety from traditional publishing.
Right.
And you get a lot more of the really, I don't want to say more interesting, but you get a lot more of the strange, more of the unique stories from the indie community, from what I've seen anyway. And sometimes traditional, they tend to pump out what they know sells and not take too many risks. And I think if traditional publishing, now when I say traditional, I mean mostly the big publishers.
I think we're thinking Big Five, stuff like that. I think that is commonly enough. Yeah.
Right. I'm not thinking, your small presses that are traditional. I'm not talking about those when I say this, but I do think the Big Five could do better with promoting more diverse, more unique, and different work. I know it's tough because they have to build an audience for it, but I think that's what the industry needs. Again, I am choosing to fight about it. I know a lot of people bring this up as well, like what I've just said, but that's definitely something I feel strongly about when it comes to the industry and what books are being put out there.
I wonder if I see this a lot on the film and TV side of things, and I argue about it loudly. Check out my Twitter. That the industry has kind of been overrun by the tech and the finance bros. That everything is like an IPO launch, and everything has unlimited scale. Everyone it'll just grow and grow and grow and get bigger, and it makes these, the diverse voices or the stories that are slightly against the grain harder and harder to put out, is because I'm not crapping on Marvel, but they are the biggest example.
I get it.
But everything is a Marvel story or Disney. I mean, look at Wish. A lot of people didn't, apparently, and that's
a lot of people didn't look at Wish
because we're being force fed. And I don't think I'm out of line saying this, because it was their 100-year anniversary movie where they literally just threw in every example of everything they've ever done into one movie, and then they turn around and look at you and like, why would you not like that? Because it's the same thing we've had for 100 years.
Yeah.
You've done things that have shown that other voices can be heard. In that vein, what types of stories that aren't the type that you write? Like you said, you mentioned romance before. You're not really good at it. I think, at comedy. I find comedy to be incredibly difficult. And I love anybody that can write a full stem to stern sort of comedy. What genre or what story elements would you want to see more of, kind of specifically because you aren't very good at doing them?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think I'm going to agree with you on comedy. While my books will have a little bit, maybe there's a humorous line here or there, but writing a full-fledged funny book, that's hard.
Oh, absolutely terrible at
I bring up Kings of the Wild again. That book is hilarious. It's an epic fantasy and it's hilarious. And I have so much respect for the author for being able to make a book that's genuinely very funny without being cringy through the whole book. And I find that incredibly hard to do. Another thing here is I've actually, since I've started reading indie books, I've gotten more into Westerns. Like I've read,
a dead genre. People have long said is dead. And it's like, no, Westerns are thriving. You just got to know where to look.
It's great. And I don't know how to write a Western. Like that's not a genre, not a setting that I would really ever think about. Well, right now, I'll say it's not something I'm really thinking about, but I've read a lot of, like I'll mention His Ragged Company, by Rance Denton.
Oh, I love Rance. Let's pimp every other author we follow on Twitter, because they're
right. That's right.
Yeah,
I use him as an example. He's the first weird Western author that I've read, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't really, one, know this was a genre, and two, you know what, this is pretty interesting. It's almost like an epic fantasy, but set in the Wild West, and that's kind of cool.
You break things down to certain components, you really start to find that they're not dissimilar, other than a couple aesthetic things and maybe some technology. But you've got the no-name silent wanderer who comes into a village. Well, change it to like town or rustic or whatever, and it's the same thing. But the idea that you wouldn't necessarily think that is a genre that's viable, because especially on the film and TV side, Westerns ruled the roost for a long time, but once Gunsmoke went into color, it pretty much died.
Yep, not anymore. But yeah, I love it. That's another reason why I really love the indie community. You get these stories that you really didn't think maybe existed, because traditional publishing is not pushing them out.
I would throw in like the horror, gothic horror.
Yes, that too.
And I could list off a list of names, but I won't, because I want to get them on the show, and let them pub their own work for themselves, because but I'm completely with you. I can't write horror. I don't particularly like it. I know of like Lovecraft and things like that, but for the people that are like knee deep in it, in the Western, in the romance, even erotic stuff. The amount of people that do erotic stuff, coupled together with fantasy, with Western, with whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
I am with you that I don't understand to any sort of degree why traditional public is afraid of it, other than they would have to put money into it. It would be a risk, and they don't want to do it. But at the same time, that's kind of what got us into doing this in the
Yeah.
beginning, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Getting those different stories out there, different voices. I love what you said about horror. That's another one for me. I am a weenie. I am not good with horror whatsoever. So seeing everybody putting out these great horror books, these really spooky covers, I'm like, that is so impressive to me. It's just not something I can do.
What is one thing that like one element that you don't do? Like, we don't do covers,
Yep.
editing. God forbid, I don't know where to put a comma, and I'll put 70 of them in anything that I do. I've never known the proper usage of
Yep.
a comma, and I never will.
Yeah.
What is one element kind of the skill set that you think people need to put a little bit more respect on the name for? Like, are we talking
Yeah.
editors? Are we talking the book, the cover artists? Are we talking, the publisher, not the publishers, but like the agents and stuff? Who is an unsung hero you think should get a little bit more love?
I think I'm going to go with cover illustrators and cover designers, especially because of the boom of AI.
For sure.
Now I think cover illustrators and designers, I think their names need to be on the forefront of everything they do, just to say, hey, listen, this was made by a real person and it's freaking awesome. That's why whenever every book I write, every book I have published, I want to have the illustrator and designer's name somewhere on the cover. If it's on the front, just on the back somewhere, just to make sure they get the credit they deserve. Because I am not an AI person. I would never use AI to make a cover or anything like that. So I just feel like with all of that coming into the industry, that we really need to appreciate these awesome designers and illustrators.
I could not have said that any better. That is one topic I have avoided on this show, simply because it is dicey. But I completely agree with you. AI for me doesn't really have a place in the game, especially when it comes at the cost of eliminating people who have those skills that were likely developed over dozens of years.
Yeah.
I could sit down and practice, foreshortening circles. I don't even know. Remember the videos in like elementary school with the guy, and he had like the spaceship like rocket or whatever, but it was a pencil. All I remember from that show is foreshortening circles. And I was like, bro, I want to draw a dragon. You're making me draw circles. And then I quit, and then I went to words. But those kids, those people that decided that those circles could then become the dragons.
Yeah.
I'm with you, dude. I want their names and their credit on everything, because I just, it's art. And I feel like we are losing a lot of what brings people to it in whatever form or fashion they desire, whether it's the written, the visual, whatever.
Yes, I agree.
And it's just it's hard out here anymore. And I completely agree. In the time we have left, where can people find you? Where can people find your work? And how can we support you?
Sure. So you can find me on really any social media, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, any of those, all with the same username, Nick_A_writes. You can also find me on my website at njalexander.com, where I have a newsletter and a whole bunch of cool stuff. How can you support me? Well, my debut novel, Fogbound, came out in October. Buying that is obviously awesome, but outside of buying it, retweet my stuff, promote it. And if you have read it, this is something for every indie writer out there. Make sure you leave a review, whether it's good or bad. We all appreciate them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Links to all those things are going to be in the show notes, and we will make sure. Nick, lovely having you on the show. Like I said, fastest half an hour in the business. Once I decide that I can afford the subscription to Zoom, it'll go longer, and then the quality of the show will go down. So
can't wait.
Glad you got in when it was good. We'll have you back on later, and you'll be like, why did I do this twice?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate it. It was a good time.
You bet, man. Appreciate your time. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bolded Slugs, the podcast, would like to thank our partners at filmsnobbery.com for hosting our show. Today's music is Sublime by Ken Bashari from the Free Music Archive, licensed under Creative Commons. Bolded Slugs, the podcast, is a Dapper Duck Media production.